to be honest, if having looked at the protocol that the UK has, it seems to me generally fairly solid. I think the waiting times are. I mean, some of the waiting times are a bit long. No,
all of the waiting times are long.
But that's across the entirety of the NHS.
No.
Oh, no, but there are people waiting like 4
you're not
years for one
understanding me.
appointment.
You're misunderstanding me entirely. So that's not the protocol. That is just that is how it's happening now. The protocol doesn't say make trans people wait 4 years. The protocol says,
oh no, I know that.
You need to wait. You need to be. What is it? I think 2 years between. You need to be living like fully as your gender 2 years before you can have bottom surgery or something like that, right? And I'm saying that like some of the things they've got in there make sense. It makes some semblance of sense. But it's a really difficult topic, and I think it needs to be a lot better.
Yeah.
But it's just like
I think it depends on what you mean by make sense as well, because like for some people they've gone their whole lives being like, yeah, I don't want a dick. And for them to have to wait 2 more years.
Able to be fast-tracked.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, I don't.
You can have some other criteria for fast-tracking people.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, it makes sense if you don't look at it just as okay, the only people that are going to be accessing this are the people that need it. If you're looking at it as though okay, there are some people here who are not necessarily like this is what's difficult. This is what's difficult about medicalizing being trans, right? Is that gender dysphoria could have a number of different causes, right? Or a number of different reasons that one might feel gender dysphoria. And the most common reason is, being trans and like, needing to transition. There are some people that, and like, this is something that I find that our side of the aisle sometimes find difficult to talk about, is that there are some people that genuinely just need therapy. And that will help them, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's for pretty much when you go to one of the appointments, you'll be asked about like family history, about mental health history, and like specifically if you've ever had like sexual abuse when you were younger. That's something that they like to talk about, obviously, for what I said earlier. But like, yeah.
I suppose if you're convinced you're trans,
yeah,
and they're going to ask that question,
yeah,
you might just say no,
yeah,
because you
exactly
want the medication, and you want the treatment,
yeah.
But that might actually be relevant. I don't know. I don't know anything about this.
The way that the protocol seems to go, it kind of, in that like the surgeries that you get, by the time you're getting bottom surgery, you'll have already been, you should basically be immediately eligible once you've, say, been on hormones for a while,
right,
and then have recovered from, say, like other, like say top surgery or something, right? To an extent, I'm not saying that it is the best that it could be. It's not the worst that it could be. It's almost fine. Like in a perfect world, it's almost fine. Although one thing I will say, that like almost to go back on everything I said, is that if from some views, okay, you could understand. Let's maybe put some sort of buffer to stop people that might be making the wrong decision here, right? Mm-hmm. Then also there are people that can just get horns implanted in their heads.
Yeah, it's like about bodily autonomy.
This is what's really difficult here, is that we let people do whatever they want to their bodies in a lot of ways. And then when it comes to trans people, there are massive barriers.
Yeah.
And you could make an argument either way, that okay, we should let anyone do whatever they want with their body, or maybe we should be a little bit more hesitant with like other body modifications, right? But it's
like if you're a cis woman and you want to get a boob job, you can go to a clinic, just get a boob job. If you're a trans person and you want bigger boobs, you have to go through so many assessments. It's not just like one assessment that you have to go to.
Yeah, why
they have
can't
to go
you
through your family history, your mental health history, what went wrong in your life to make you think that you need boobs. Like,
because why can't you just like...
Yeah. Well,
if I want a trained medical professional to just place some physical matter underneath my chest, why can't I do that?
That's why it's like such a difficult conversation to have, because like on the one hand, yes, it makes sense that there are barriers in place for some people that maybe would rush into a medical transition if maybe in the future it's not right for them, but it's also the case of like, why are we putting these rules up for trans people when cis people don't have these rules for the exact same treatment?
Do you want my most nuclear take? What? My absolute most nuclear take on this stuff.
Oh God!
Whenever people talk about transition or protecting people that might be making the wrong decision, I have a very hard number on like what level of detransitioners is like acceptable, right? That number is 49%. You can go up to 49%, and if you go past 49%, okay, then start putting the limitations. Because what you were right. This is what happens, right? If you let's say you've got anything less than 49%, then you actually have got a very high success rate with helping trans people, right? With helping people. If you had if you were to basically stop treatment at anything less than 49%, what you're doing is saying, these trans people, their experience is worth less than these non-trans people.
It's 51%.
Yeah. It's also with like if you have like cancer and you've got like a really risky treatment where there's a 20% chance that you'll live, you'll still take that because there's a chance that you will live. But when it comes to like trans stuff, like there's like a less than 1% rate of detransitioners, and because of those detransitioners, so many people are hesitant.
Well, it clearly comes down to the fact that ultimately people don't want trans people to exist, right? And they're coming up with any reason that, well, actually there's detransitioners. What if people are making a mistake? Okay, right, but you can see that most people aren't making mistakes. So if...
Objectively.
If you have an issue with people being depressed and all of that stuff from having dysphoria, wouldn't it be better to have, like, as few people as possible have dysphoria? And if essentially what detransitioners experience is dysphoria, would it not be better to let more people transition, and then if you've got detransitioners, as long as they're below the level of trans people at the beginning, then you're good?
It's also super interesting how this is like, it almost breaks the traditional political lines, because I think you could probably make a fairly safe bet that at least a sizable majority of the people who are sort of pro-trans will probably be on the left side of the political spectrum. And I think you can probably make a fairly safe bet that a decent chunk of the people who are anti-trans are on the right side of the spectrum.
Yeah, of course.
And what's super interesting about that is that we're talking about, having access to like taking testosterone if you're born female, for example. And in the traditional political lines, the right would want to like reduce the amount of red tape in place to individuals making free choices in a free market economy, right? And so the traditional line would be, if you want to purchase testosterone, which is not a class A, B, or C substance, why, if there isn't a good reason to have it regulated, then we shouldn't regulate it. But then in this case, it's sort of the left or members on the left arguing for the liberalization of access to or the decrease in the amount of regulation. It's super interesting.
I think a lot of it is just like fear mongering. Like it's like, it's pretty simple that like read any of the studies. They all suggest that like if a trans person has the accessibility to has access to medical transition, after medical transition, they will be happier. And it's so strange to me that there's like this massive debate about like, what should we do with trans people? How many barriers should we put in place to stop them doing those things that may make them happier? It's so strange, because it's just like, you give somebody who is sad that they don't have tits, they'll probably be a bit happier about that.
I think it's because it makes them question the entire basis of their worldview.
Yeah, true. Yes.
But this is what's frustrating to me, is that it's so clear. Like, the evidence that we have makes it very obvious that just letting people get on with themselves, it's fine. And these the protocols for you need to be living in your assigned gender role for a year and a half before getting bottom surgery. That would probably not be an issue if people were just able to live as whatever gender they wanted. For and leading up to that, right? Do you know what I mean? Like, if you realize you're trans when you're say 12, and your parents are like, okay, cool, be trans. Then by the time you're 18, you're not gonna have to wait for bottom surgery, because you'll have, what I mean? You'll have been living in it for that long. So
years.
this is what's frustrating, is that there are issues with the protocol that we've got. Definitely, it's not perfect, but it would definitely be made better if people just bloody accepted. Obviously, more resources in general, but if people just the bare minimum you could do is just accept and support the trans people in your life. And if a kid is saying. If a kid is sort of being non-normative in their gender expression, you don't need to force them to be trans. Not that anyone is doing that. People genuinely say people are doing that. That's not what it is. You just need to be like, yeah, you can do what you want.
Yeah.
And that is genuinely taken to be into being people are transing kids. But ultimately, who is really transing kids? Who is really imposing their ideology on children here?
Trans YouTubers.
The people that are saying, hey kid, you can kind of do what you want, or the people that are saying, hey, you look like a boy, so you have to be a boy, and if you're not, then I'm going to send you to conversion therapy. You know, like, I feel like you're the bad ones here, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.